The rain had started falling just as I stepped out of the office, soft at first, but quickly turning into a steady pour that soaked the pavement and blurred the city lights. I stood under the building's awning, balancing my tote bag on my shoulder and dialing for a ride, only to realize that my phone had died. Just perfect. It had already been a draining day, hours of back-to-back meetings, a proposal that needed rewriting 3 times, and a printer jam that somehow led to a paper cut that still stung. I closed my eyes, trying to think. I could walk, but I lived nearly 6 miles away. The buses were unreliable in this weather, and the idea of standing out there any longer made my toes curl. Just then, I heard a familiar voice. "Need a ride?" I turned to see a sleek black SUV pull up by the curb. The window rolled down, and behind it sat a face I recognized. Luke Ramsey, my boss's youngest son. I blinked in surprise. Luke was only 19 or 20, a college sophomore if I remembered correctly, and the youngest of Mr. Ramsey's 3 kids. He usually visited the office during summers and occasionally on weekends. Most people didn't pay much attention to him, assuming he was just tagging along or killing time. But he always smiled when he saw me, always made it a point to say hello. I stepped closer. "Luke." "Yeah. I saw you standing out here looking like you were deciding between drowning or teleporting," he said, grinning. "Come on, hop in. I'll give you a ride home." I hesitated. It felt strange accepting a ride from the boss's son. But the rain was picking up, and I didn't have much of a choice. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to. Seriously, I've got nothing going on. Plus, I wouldn't leave a good person out in this storm." I got in. The warmth of the SUV wrapped around me, and I exhaled deeply. It smelled faintly of leather and mint. Luke handed me a towel from the back seat, which I gratefully used to pat down my arms and face. "Thanks," I said. "This is really kind of you." "No problem," he said, pulling smoothly into traffic. "So, rough day. You could say that. It's been one of those weeks where the coffee machine breaks on a Monday and everything goes downhill from there." He laughed. "I know the feeling. Finals are coming up, and I've been practically living at the library. But hey, at least I'm not presenting proposals to my dad. That's got to be intense." "It has its moments," I admitted with a smile. We rode in silence for a few minutes, the soft hum of the engine and the rain tapping against the windows filling the space between us. I looked over at him, realizing how much he'd changed. He was taller, more defined in the jaw than the last time I'd seen him, and there was something different in his demeanor, more composed, more thoughtful. "You've grown up," I said before I could stop myself. Luke chuckled. "I've heard that a lot lately. I guess college has a way of forcing you to grow fast." "True," I replied. "But you seem different. More mature." He glanced at me quickly before returning his eyes to the road. "Thanks. That actually means a lot coming from you." I turned my head slightly. "From me?" He nodded, his fingers tightening ever so slightly around the steering wheel. "You probably don't know this, but I've always noticed you at the office. Even when I was younger. You were the only one who treated me like a person, not just the boss's kid. You always said hi. You remembered my name. You didn't just ignore me or give me that awkward smile people do when they don't really know what to say." I blinked. "I didn't realize that mattered to you." "It mattered more than you know," he said quietly. "Back then, I was trying to figure out who I was, and most days, I felt like a ghost. My dad's world is so busy, so polished. It's easy to feel like you don't belong in it. But you made me feel seen." There was something raw in his voice that made my chest tighten. I looked down at my hands, unsure of how to respond. "I'm glad I could help, even if I didn't know I was," I said softly. We passed through the heart of the city, the rain forming streams on the windshield as the wipers swept back and forth. The streetlights cast glowing reflections that danced across the dashboard. Luke turned down the music and then surprised me with what he said next. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. It's probably not something I should say, But I need to. Just once. I felt the tension in the air shift. I've had feelings for you. For a long time. I looked over at him, stunned. He kept his eyes on the road, but his jaw was tight. Luke. I know how that sounds. You're older, you work with my dad, and I'm just the kid who used to hang around. But I'm not a kid anymore, and I've spent years watching you light up rooms, handle pressure, carry yourself with this strength and grace. You're beautiful. And kind. And real. I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. My heart pounded in my chest. You don't have to say anything, he continued. I just needed you to know. It's not about expecting something or making it weird. I had to get it out. We sat in silence as he pulled up in front of my apartment. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and the world outside looked quiet and muted. I finally turned toward him. Luke, I'm honored you feel that way. Truly. But this is unexpected. And complicated. You're younger, and your dad. I know, he interrupted gently. Like I said, I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. That someone out there sees you, not for your job, not for what you do for my dad, but for who you are. I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because it had been a long time since anyone had looked at me like that, spoken to me like that, with honesty, vulnerability, and no agenda. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. It means more than you know. He nodded, his expression soft. Good night, Emma. Good night, Luke. I stepped out of the car and walked up to my door. I stood there for a moment before turning around. His car was still there, lights on. Then, slowly, it pulled away into the night. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. Not because I was flattered or intrigued, though I was both, but because it cracked something open in me. I'd spent so much time moving through life efficiently, hiding pieces of myself behind a professional smile, never realizing that someone had been watching closely, really seeing me. At work, nothing changed on the surface. Luke wasn't around, and I didn't mention anything to anyone. But something in me shifted. I started smiling more, standing a little straighter, making eye contact longer. It wasn't about Luke exactly. It was about being reminded that I mattered beyond the spreadsheet deadlines and email replies. Then, a week later, I got a message. It was simple. Hope the rain's treating you better this time. It made me laugh. I replied, and soon, we were talking again. Not romantically, not in any inappropriate way, but as two people who shared an honest moment and found comfort in knowing they weren't invisible. Life continued. But from that night on, whenever it rained, I'd think about that drive home. About the confession that shattered me, not in a painful way, but in the kind of way that breaks open walls you didn't realize you'd built. And maybe, just maybe, that's where healing begins. In the unexpected words of someone who saw you when you didn't even see yourself.